everybody. So glad to see you here. I think this might be a little bit of what we'll dub the Roger Marshall effect. Yes, we do town halls pretty consistently during session, every second Sunday. Typically here at Tomahawk, or if we have to go to a different location, if they have something big going on, we do that. But we are here to answer questions, provide information to you, give you updates about what is going on in Topeka. And I will just say, there are so many things happening that you need to be aware of. These next 3 weeks will be extremely critical. That's pretty much all we have left of this year's session. It is a very compact schedule this year that is by design to some degree, and it's concerning because there's some very bad bills, some bad initiatives that we need to stay very, very focused to. So you all are very engaged, you pay attention, and we just need that to keep going on again for at least the next few weeks as we have some of these critical bills making their way through the process. Now, one thing that is happening that is extremely important is there's a constitutional amendment this year. So, you know, we had one of those a couple of years ago. So we have this constitutional amendment that was introduced to change the way Supreme Court justices in Kansas are elected. May not seem like a very big deal on face level, but the implications are extremely concerning. We have a process in place that is a merit selection that we've had for decades that has worked very well, that ensures we have qualified people appointed. And people essentially go through that process. The governor is given 3 to choose from to make her choice. Now, what is being proposed is essentially a political election system like we have for everything in other spots. The issue with that, as you may have seen, is that you end up getting PACs and lots of money, big money interest coming in to essentially buy those spots. So it is very concerning that we would politicize the courts, and then you would have justices who are beholden to certain special interest groups. And that's, like I said, a very huge concern. So it is such a big issue that we wanted to devote some of our time today to that topic. So before we go through and give you an update, we're going to have our special guest talk a little bit and be here to answer some questions for you, again, about that situation. So if you would please join me in welcoming Michael Fleming.
Thank you. As Senator Holscher said, my name is Mike Fleming. I'm a lawyer in the area. I live in Kansas. My office is in Lee Summit. I'm licensed in both states. I represent individuals who've been harmed, generally through no fault of their own. I represent individuals in contract matters and employment disputes. Recently, as of 2 years ago, I was the president of the Kansas Trial Lawyers Association. It's the second largest association of attorneys in Kansas. And many of the attorneys in our association have practices like mine. We represent individuals. We have been tracking the legislature's initiative regarding the Supreme Court. And as the senator said, we have in place a nominating commission made up of 5 lawyers and 4 non-lawyers. The 4 non-lawyers are appointed by the governor, and the 5 lawyers are elected by lawyers in each of their congressional districts. So we have 4 congressional districts, 4 lawyers from each congressional district, and the 5th is elected statewide by lawyers. When there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court, the nominating commission convenes. They review applications. They conduct interviews of the applicants. They receive input from their colleagues. After they interview all the applicants, they submit a list of 3 to the governor, and the governor's office then does their due diligence. They go through the application process. They interview the final 3 candidates, and then the governor decides who should be on the Supreme Court. The initiative in the legislature now, as the senator said, calls for partisan elections. So it would eliminate the nominating commission, and we would just have statewide elections for each of the 7 spots on the Kansas Supreme Court. It's already passed the Senate. And this is not just a bill, it's a proposed constitutional amendment which requires 2/3 of each chamber to support it. It passed by 1 vote in the Senate, 27 to 13. I made some notes. I want to make sure my math is right. I think there are 125 state reps, and they need 84 to pass this. There are 37 Democrats, 88 Republicans, so they need 4 or 5 Republicans to vote against it. The issue does not, if it does pass the House, it doesn't go on to the governor's desk. She has no opportunity to veto it. It then goes on the ballot. And according to this initiative, it will be on the ballot in the primary of 2026, just like they did in 2022. So that's the plan. I like the current model. Some of the criticisms that the majority party has made about merit selection is that it's driven by lawyers. I think lawyers should have an input on who is selected as Supreme Court. Lawyers don't make, the nominating commission doesn't ultimately make the decision, the governor does. But lawyers, candidly, and I can say this as a non-politician, lawyers are in a better position to know and understand and see the qualifications and know what makes a good judge. So I think it's important that they continue to have a role in that process. They also say that this is done in secret. Not so. When the nominating commission convenes, it's open to the public. If you want to go and listen into the interviews, you're more than welcome to. So it's not a secretive process. I've heard that the majority party say that, well, we just want the public to have a say in how we select judges. I haven't seen any of that. I have not seen a groundswell of support from any of the folks in this group or in any of the corner of the state saying, hey, we really got to elect our judges. So some of you may recall that this initiative came up, I think, in 2008 here in Johnson County. Johnson County, locally, when we appoint district judges, we have a nominating commission like the Supreme Court nominating commission. They put on the ballot in 2008 that they would eliminate that in support of partisan elections. That failed, and I don't know what the numbers are. I want to say 68% of Johnson County residents back then voted no, and so it's kind of gone away because I think they got the message. I don't think Johnson County residents want partisan elections for their judges. So that's another issue that keeps popping up, that this is what the public wants. Forgive me as I review my notes. Another issue that they keep saying is that our Supreme Court is the most overturned court in the United States. And in fact, since 2019, the United States Supreme Court has overturned the Kansas Supreme Court 5 times. That's a little misleading. In that same amount of time, the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, has had the opportunity to hear 78 different cases from the state of Kansas. They have denied review on 73. Now, what you need to know is that when the Supreme Court takes a case from the state of Kansas, or from any state, they're probably going to overturn the state Supreme Court's decision. So, in effect, they have affirmed our state court, our state Supreme Court, 73 times and overturned them 5. So when you hear this idea that, well, we've got this wildly out of control Supreme Court, it's not true at all. Senator Holscher talked about the money that will be required if we have partisan elections. This morning, my wife and I were having coffee, and the TV was on in the background. It was on MSNBC, and I heard them talking to a candidate from Wisconsin who was up for a special election in April, and I wasn't really paying attention to the office at that point, but it's kind of a typical interview. She's talking about why her Republican opponent will be bad. He's funded by Elon Musk. That her candidate wants to affirm every decision, all the MAGA decisions, and wants to keep in place, the MAGA bills. And then I heard some discussion about money and how much money she thought would need to support her campaign. And then I heard her say that she was running for a Supreme Court justice position in Wisconsin. And I remember that the last time a Wisconsin Supreme Court justice was up, I think both parties raised about $52 million. Now, that money's not going to come, if we change things here, that money's not going to come from you guys. It's going to come from out of state. And I think we know why the majority party wants to do this. There are a number of issues that they want to see overturned. Women's reproductive health, school finance. And then more broadly, I think they just want to control things. It's power. You know, if a justice, if we have partisan elections and a justice decides a case in a manner that they deem unfavorable, they can threaten to primary them, kind of like they do in the various state house races. So I think that's what we can anticipate if it passes the House and it passes in August of 2026. So I'll take any questions if you have them. I know that real quick, this issue I think is going to be heard by the House this week, possibly. So if you feel strongly about this, I encourage everyone to reach out to their representatives and let them know what you think.
Ace in the very back.
To judges, I don't know this. To judges, Supreme Court judges, and do they even need to have a law license?
Yes.
The question was, do they need to have a law license? The answer is yes.
Not county judges, or
Well,
attorneys general.
No, magistrates don't. District court judges do have to have a license. And one more point I'll make. I come from a family of judges. My dad was a judge. My sister-in-law is a judge. If I don't speak for them, but knowing them as I do, if they felt they had to raise money and engage in partisan politics to be a judge, they wouldn't do it. So what you're going to see is the candidate pool is going to shrink. And who's going to run for these jobs? Guys like Chris Kobach, Phil Klein. Remember Phil Klein? That's who we can expect. Yes, ma'am.
You have this information somewhere like a fact sheet, so if we want to get people together to do a letter writing campaign or stop this from happening, not so much next week, but in 26, is there anywhere to get all this information that you provided today?
We do have some handouts. I don't know if it has all the information, but it's got some information. It's got, if you want to reach out to your state rep, how you can contact him. I set aside a bunch of business cards, and of course I walk off without them, but I'm happy to give my contact.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
And we can communicate, and I'll give you what information I have.
I will tell you 6 Degrees of Activism, which is on a lot of the social media, has a lot of great information about this situation, this particular bill. Also, Mainstream Coalition has put some pretty good things out there too. Over here on the wall, yes.
So if it does pass and people are, like you said, that a couple people are actually like running for these jobs, like what would be the process for them to actually like get on the ticket? Like it could just be anybody who has the most money, like.
I assume so. If you have a license, you run in a primary, you get elected by your party, then you're in the general election. Yes.
Did you say that it's passed Senate?
Yes.
And it's gonna go for a vote, a public vote, right?
No. Not yet. It's got to pass the House by 2/3.
It's
And
gonna pass the House by 2/3, and then.
it will go on the ballot in August of 2026.
If it goes on the ballot, is there a certain percentage it has to pass by?
50% plus one?
Yeah, simple majority.
Yes, ma'am?
I would rather not wait for it to pass.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
I did everything in the last primary one. So, is there a way to target, I know how Mari-Lynn is gonna vote, bless your heart, but is there, so I need to write and encourage other representatives. Is there a way to do that smartly, or just blanket the?
I'll defer to our elected folks
Yeah.
on that question.
I mean, since it is the entire House that will be voting, I would encourage you, yes, reach out to, you can reach out to all House members via email. You can make phone calls. I don't know, I kind of feel like emails, sometimes legislators see the volume and the quantity coming through, that has an impact. But yeah, now's the time to do that, start getting those emails sent out. I don't know if you all have any individuals that you think are impressionable at this point.
going to speak to that, but one of the things that I would recommend is that, as Mike Fleming pointed out, Johnson County has already weighed in on this, although it was a while ago. So we do have, I'm assuming that all of the Democrats in Johnson County will vote no. I would email your own representative and then all of the Johnson County delegation and say Johnson County is very clear on this and we're counting on you to save the state. And if you CC your own representative, so if that's one of us up here, then you hold the other ones accountable. We know that they've gotten the email and they know that we know that they've gotten the emails.
Yeah, and honestly, if we could just get all of the delegation from Johnson County to vote against it, I think we would be fine. It would put us at the needed numbers. Jan?
I was just gonna say, Mark Schreiber out of Emporia, is the titular head of the moderates, and maybe they could grow some backbone for this one vote.
And you know what, you'll probably see some more posts coming from all of us on this topic, listing some information as far as who, you know, to target. But again, lots of folks right here in Johnson County you can reach out to. Yes, sir, right next to you.
If this happens, does all of the current Supreme Justices have to run or get eliminated day one, or is it a cycle?
Okay. Yes, there's a schedule as to how that rotation is. You would not lose them all right off the bat.
Yeah, so it'd be a retention period.
Right. Very back.
Considering the caseload of the court system, it just seemed like an argument would be made that they need to be focused on their job instead of focused on
Amen. No, and that's a concern. I mean, if they should be reading briefs, hearing oral arguments, drafting opinions, and if they can't do that because they're out on the road on the stump, you know, they're not going to be doing their job.
What happens if this passes and a Supreme Court judge dies or leaves the bench? Then we've got open seats, right?
Correct.
So,
And I don't know precisely how that'll work. It may provide that the governor can make the appointment in the short term, and then the next time that particular seat is up, there would be a partisan election for it.
We've got one over here.
Is there anything that practicing attorneys or law students can do at this point in the state?
Yeah, so in the corner she asked, is there anything that practicing attorneys or law students can do? I think contacting your representative and expressing your displeasure with this is probably the best thing you can do. So, thank you. You know, I'm going to come to you. I do want to make one point. From what I hear, this is being pushed in large part by Ty Masterson, the President of the Senate. And to give you an example of how strongly he's pushing it, you know, there are various committees in both the House and the Senate. There's a Judiciary Committee in the Senate. This initiative did not go to the Senate Judiciary. It went to state and federal, which is chaired by Mike Thompson. There wasn't a lawyer on the committee to discuss this issue, so, yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to mention, why did we, and I'll answer this, why did we go to this system? Because I believe it's called the Kansas Triple Scandal.
Triple play.
Triple Scandal. Like,
Back in the 50s, back then, the governor appointed Supreme Court justices. And I think it was just, the governor selected, there was no confirmation process. So the sitting governor ran for re-election, lost in the primary, and as his last day in office was coming up, he said to his lieutenant governor, hey, there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court. I'm going to resign. You become governor. You appoint me. Everyone's happy. He did. The public was outraged, and they were outraged to the point that they said, hey, we need to change this. We need a merit-based system, and that's what we've got today. Yeah, that's okay. We have about 30 sheets up here, so if you want one, please make your way up and get one, and or we can pass it back.
And right up here, we've got, did you have a question? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I have sort of a different kind of comment to make. I like that you mentioned that you were watching MSNBC and you saw that person from Wisconsin MSNBC and CNN, watching TV. I do not like to get things in the mail. I don't really watch local TV channels anymore. Get my news from my apps. I would like to see somebody like you on MSNBC. Saying that you gave this excellent information. I think that communication is critical. I think Citizens United is ruining this country.
Absolutely.
And I wish we would see more people from Kansas. I was so happy when that thing about Roger Marshall came out. But in addition to all the things you do locally and people talking with each other, personally, I know a lot of my friends don't want to talk about politics because they don't know what's going on. But I would just encourage people like you to appear more on national TV shows.
I appreciate it. But some friends might tell me that I've got the face for radio. Yeah.
So, and again, I printed 30 of these. The sheets that we're referencing actually, and I'm such a QR code fan because, you know, a piece of paper is dead. But with the QR code, you can actually look up who your representative is in the Kansas legislature. The next QR code is the entire Kansas House roster, so you can pick and choose who you would like to reach out to. There's a QR code to SCR 1611, so you can read it for yourself. And if you have questions about what happens if somebody dies, that will be in the text of the actual bill. And then there is a QR code to an NPR story about exactly what is happening in Wisconsin with billionaires trying to buy that Supreme Court seat, and then a couple of the talking points as well. So I only have 30, and you can pick them up afterward, and maybe we can figure out a way to get a few more copies, and we're happy to send them out as well.
Can that be put online?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, two more questions. Cheryl, you're here. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Just a comment. I'm a lawyer, and we have a great system here in Kansas, and we have solid, balanced courts with qualified lawyers on them who are solid judges. Wisconsin's a nightmare, and it embarrasses me as a lawyer to see what goes on there, and I'm just so hoping that this goes nowhere, or if it does, that the voters turn it down. I mean, one of the best things about our state is that we do have a merit-based judiciary.
For those of you who don't know, this is Cheryl Pilot, a dear friend of mine who has been intricately involved in the Roger Golubsky case out of KCK. She is the person who helped exonerate Lamont McIntyre, who was essentially framed by Roger. Also exonerate Darrell Burton from Missouri. Heavily involved in some of these very, very important cases, and just such an important person in our legal system. So thank you, Cheryl. Okay, I was left with one question. You asked one already.
Well, I had just more a comment based on like your QR code thing, if that's easy for people. There is an app now called Five Calls.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't heard of it, download it because you can put in where you live and it gives you your representative and it gives you a script. So if you're not sure what to say on your calls, it can help you formulate what you want to say.
I've been using it.
Excellent. All right, we have a gentleman right there who had his hand up. You get the last question, sir.
Yeah, I've been.
Hold on a second. No. Oh, let me say, if anybody else wants to come sit down, I know you can't see it, but there's chairs over here and a lot of open space. If you go out to that next door, or you can come get really close to us. There's a couple chairs right here.
Yeah, like, dude, you guys can have my chair. I can stand just fine for an hour. Like, seriously, if someone wants one, just let me know.
All right, so sir, you get the final question.
Are the justices term limited, and are there any provisions in this new amendment to address something like that?
The short answer is I don't know. I think in Kansas, the judges can serve until 75 or until their tenure is up, whichever occurs last. Supreme Court justices currently are on the ballot for attention every 6 years, district judges and Court of Appeals judges every 4. I know that about district judges, I think that about Court of Appeals judges. As to I assume that the age requirements stay the same, that they can retire, they would retire at 75 or when their tenure's up.
One more thing, I never
Sure.
thought I'd hear a lawyer admit to being embarrassed. I find that gratifying.
That's funny. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for being here. I agree with you. We should get him an invitation to MSNBC or somewhere to share this information. So again, thank you for being here. We will now go into like the next portion of our event where each of our reps will give a quick overview of what's happening, committees that you need to be aware of. They'll let you know which district they represent, give you an idea of the boundaries. Most of the folks here are within Senate 8. We've got a couple friends that are just outside the area, but very important to the dynamics here in Johnson County. So we will start down here with Linda. Linda, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Linda Featherston. I represent House District 16. So that's Overland Park, from the mall to the community college, and then down to the KU Edwards campus at 129th Street. We kind of squeeze between Flum and 69 Highway, except north of the community college, not Lenexa. So I am the ranking member on, let's see if I can remember this, local government. I'm the ranking member on agriculture, and I serve on education and water. And I like to say something positive. So water committee works very well. We have zero, I know, right? There is no partisan nonsense that occurs in that committee, and we are really making progress with getting the whole legislature, or at least enough to pass a bill, behind the importance of our water issues, both running out in western Kansas and having good quality here on the eastern. So that might be the only thing positive I have to say, but I think it's important to know there is one committee that is functioning exactly how government should function. Yay. Out of my committees, the big thing that's going to tomorrow, vouchers will be back in the Education Committee at 1:30. We've already heard one bill that did not get worked, so this one's going to come back, and well, I'm not going to be supporting it because there's no accountability for your tax dollars. We've been doing some research over the weekend, and it appears there's a whole school system that they've gotten $9.7 million tax dollars, and they don't charge tuition. So I have a lot of questions for committee tomorrow of how are we accounting for that money at all? Is that money going straight to a family, and then are they obligated to give it to the system that doesn't charge tuition? Or what's happening to your tax dollars? I'm a piano teacher. I've had homeschool kids, I've had private school kids, I've had public school kids. However you want to educate your kids is certainly your business. But I, as the steward of your tax dollars, am responsible to make sure that we, as a legislative body, are accountable to you and where that money is going and how it is being spent. So that is my concern with the issue. And I think my other committees are pretty even, Steven. So.
Thank you, Linda. I really miss being on water for that reason. Hi, my name is Representative Heather Meyer. I represent Overland Park, approximately between 95th, 99th, down to 135th, from Metcalf to 69 Highway-ish. I've been in the seat since 2021, and I am currently serving on House Fed and State Affairs, Health and Human Services, Elections, and Insurance. Those committees are pretty controversial, actually, so it's been an exhausting year. Fed and State, we didn't really meet much this week. Actually, we didn't meet at all. The chair, said, well, we don't have a lot to do this week, so we're going to be having a heavy week coming up this week. There is one bill that I'm particularly annoyed with, and I was trying to pull up the language. Stephanie, you might be able to help me out, or Dan, but it is, it's the one about the World Economic Forum.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's pretty,
Schmoy.
yes, yeah. So, there are still some controversial bills coming through there. In Health and Human Services, we often hear bills that are good but also a lot of bad bills. This week, we passed out a pretty decent bill, increasing funding and availability for mental health intervention teams for schools across the state. It was heavily supported by private schools. However, it does give an opportunity for everyone, public schools and private across the state, to be able to take advantage of mental health services inside the school for their children. And we know that mental health is a really big issue for kids across the state right now. And I say that especially as a mental health professional myself. I have seen a lot of families coming in lately who are very concerned about being able to access mental health care for their kids. And so expanding that service throughout the school districts as well is a great idea. Elections, wow. That committee is headed up by Representative Pat Proctor. And it's very controversial, nonstop. There are some terrible bills coming into and out of that committee on a regular basis. We don't have the numbers in there to be able to stop them like we wish we would be able to. And the one you might know most about is the recent 3-day grace period bill. That was a big fight. And, we're hopeful that the governor will veto that bill. I don't think she's made that decision yet.
We're not allowed to speculate.
Correct. Yes. So, but I am hopeful, fingers crossed. We got a lot of feedback from people across the state about how negatively that would impact them, particularly from veterans and people with children who live out of state, people who are living with disabilities, people who are caring for loved ones with disabilities, folks who are older, everybody. And this bill is just a terrible bill, and it would really stifle the ability for your votes to count and disenfranchise voters across the state. I particularly think it's interesting that elections has been this wild this year too, and there's a pretty strong rumor that I think is to believe that Representative Proctor plans to announce that he will be running for Secretary of State at a fundraiser he has coming up on the 3rd of April. So that is likely why he's doing that. And so if we are right, you have a taste of what to expect from him if he were to become Secretary of State. So I would pay very close attention to that. Insurance is insurance. A lot of shell bills, which means that we pass out bills that mirror bills in the Senate, and then they take them to conference committee, and replace them with something else. I tend to vote against those bills, even though I serve on the insurance committee, because I don't like the process, and I think that shell bills are undermining the transparency for our voters across the districts and across the state. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's been a hell of a session so far, but I'm here. So thank you all for coming out today.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Osman. I'm the representative for District 48. That is starting at 119th Street and going to 159th Street, Schweitzer to Metcalf. So I've been the representative for District 48 for the last 2 terms. It's my 3rd term now. First of all, by the way, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for coming out here today. This is fantastic. I see a lot of faces that have been here before. Welcome back. Thank you for coming in. But for new people, there are people that I've not seen here before, and that is fantastic. And whether this is your first town hall with us or first town hall at all, thank you for making your voice heard. And hopefully this will be the next step in just continuing on with being involved in the process because I love that. I am the representative, so I'm on Fed State, I'm on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, and I'm the ranking member on Judiciary. I am a licensed attorney, and I'm one of 2 attorneys on the Democratic side, and there's only 4 attorneys in total in the entire House. So we, on Judiciary, do not even have a quorum of lawyers on our committee. So that is the type of work that we're dealing with here. But we try to make it work, and you know, hopefully, I would say probably 2 years ago, we were really doing really nice things out of Judiciary in a nonpartisan fashion. Now, not so much, but I'm trying to fight the good fight on this one. There's one of the interesting things as well, not just on Judiciary. So we talked about SCR 1611. That's the one that deals with Supreme Court justices and how they get either merit selected or elected. That's going to be a constitutional amendment. There are lots and lots of proposed constitutional amendments this year. So many so that the Constitution actually says on any particular ballot you can only have 5 constitutional amendments, and they are likely to go over that and roll it on to another election. It is very likely that one or both of your ballots in 2026 for either the primary or the general election are going to be 10 pages long, filled with texts, so that you have to read at the polls on for or against at least 5 different constitutional amendments. This is not how the process is supposed to work. I do not believe that the Constitution should be something that you play with for partisan politics or something that you do to try to drum up support and bring people out to the polls. The Constitution is the Constitution, and it's there to be the highest law in the state of Kansas. So that is, I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to pass it along to Representative Clayton. But thank you all again for coming out. Oh, one last thing. If you guys haven't signed up for newsletters, and if you haven't taken one of my cards, you can get in contact with me anytime you want to. I'm happy to help.
All right, so he didn't say this, but I can. Representative Osman is a dear, patient, and wonderful man because he serves as the other member. I'm the vice chair of the Rules Committee. He's the other Democratic member on that. He also serves on Commerce and Fed and State with me, and we are in the same office. His patience and goodwill are to be commended. Because I can be a lot, but that's fine because I like to be a lot in my capacity as a representative for all of you. So I represent the area between Metcalf and State Line, 83rd and 103rd, but if you're east of Mission Road, the boundaries are Somerset down to 95th. So basically Eastern Overland Park, South Prairie Village, and Old Leawood. So my morning committee is Federal and State Affairs. I serve on that with Representative Meyer and Representative Osman. We did not meet at all this week. We will have sort of an odd bill hearing that is basically, it's brought by our vice chair who's, yeah. I can't say anything nice, but in any case, so what that person wants to do is basically make it so that Kansas doesn't have to recognize anything put forth by the World Health Organization or the United Nations. Yeah. So, it doesn't hold any ground. So, a lot of times what I see is in the State House, we'll see people that really wish that they could be in Congress, and then they are trying to act as if the Supremacy Clause does not exist. They run fairly irrational legislation that has no real teeth, but it does take up valuable committee time because I can tell you I would much rather be doing literally anything else than wasting my time over such a symbolic hearing. Most particularly, I'd like to be providing constituent service and answering emails. I'm also the ranking minority member on the Commerce Committee, which usually handles, mostly like pretty calm economic development incentives and business-related bills. But we have seemed to notice a very strong theme of deregulation. And so that seems to be coming through with, again, like I think a bunch of folks that, kind of wish that they were on the Doge committee. And, it's, sort of like, Elon White. And again, this is Kansas. This is not DC. Those types of politics do not play well here. And something that's going to end up, causing me no small amount of chagrin. I'm a member of the tax committee, and I actually really support a constitutional amendment that we just voted for. I want to tell you all about it. It is called HCR 5011. And so how many of you had a weird spike in your valuations for your house this year? Because yikes, a lot of us would have gotten that, and so frankly, that's the free market doing what it does. I look and I'm like, oh yeah, I too would super want to live at my house. But the problem is that, I'm a single parent on a fixed income. And so these valuation spikes and the taxation changes hurt me. I know I'm not the only person in my district or in this room who is living on a fixed income. And so that makes it very difficult for us to budget. You've either paid your houses off or those tax increases get rolled into escrow, which means that your mortgage payment is higher. So now, I am happy and honored to pay taxes, but those major spikes cause us issues. So what HCR 5011 does, and if it gets passed it did get passed with a 2/3 majority in the House, it needs to get passed with a 2/3 majority in the Senate. I don't know if that's going to happen because of reasons I'll tell you in just a minute. But in any case, that would go on your ballot in November, not in August. And so basically what that does is that instead of these spikes every year, it would incorporate sort of a rolling average of the increases. So this doesn't really stymie local government, and it doesn't, if you support it at the polls or support it in the state house, it doesn't make you, a property tax hating weirdo. We still want government to be funded. But this does make it easier for all of us to make sure that we are getting that taken care of without being taxed out of house and home. And so that was a really important thing for me to support. I am honored to be on the tax committee. I know a lot of people's eyes glaze over when I talk about it, but to me, the way that our tax plan is set in the state of Kansas, and Senator Holscher, sorry, but back in the day, she and I worked together on very important tax reform in 2017. And so I know that she feels the same way that I do. Our tax plan reflects the morality of the government because it shows you all who we think should be paying for it, who we think shouldn't be paying for it, and how that all works. We hear that a lot when it comes to the budget and the budget process, but to me, I still think that our tax plan is too regressive. Our sales taxes are too high, and I think that our income taxes are too low, and I think that our property taxes are too high. So I don't know if I necessarily believe in tax cuts. I do to a certain degree, but I think that the wrong people are paying a little bit too much. And, spoiler alert, it's you guys. So anyway, it's my honor to be here. I'm happy to answer your questions. Shout out to our friends on the side. I really appreciate you all being here. And thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and again, I'm going to echo Representative Osman's comments about you being here on this glorious Sunday afternoon. It means a lot to us, and we represent the people, and to see your faces is just fabulous. I'm Representative Mari-Lynn Poskin. I represent Kansas House District 20, and the boundaries for that are state line 95th Street down to 135th, all the way over to Mission as a rectangle, and then 103rd to 127th over to Metcalf. So this is my 5th year in the legislature. I am currently the ranking member on our Veterans and Military Committee in the House. Do not let people tell you that Democrats do not support our veterans. We are here for veterans, and I am very proud of that ranking position. I also serve on financial institutions and pensions. We're trying to do some work with capers. We have weird things like Bitcoin bills. That one's not my favorite. Then I also serve on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development with Representatives Clayton and Osman. Again, a gamut of bills in there this year. And one of the main reasons I ran for this office was for our public schools. My husband, David, back there in the back, thank you, hon. And I have a blended family of 7 children who spent 90 years in K-12 classrooms. So our public schools are really important. 62 of those are in Johnson County Public Schools, and my kids went to other schools and lived in other states before I moved here. So I also serve on the K-12 Budget Committee, and that committee has had a lot of drama in the last couple of years, and it's where they've tried to put some of the worst budget bills and education bills through, and they did something interesting this year. They removed the chair, made her vice chair of appropriations, and put in a nice Republican from Dodge City, and the idea was kumbaya in K-12 budget. So we actually did a lot of good work. We, put out a budget that was bipartisan, which was an exercise in futility because the former chair just hatcheted the education budget in appropriations. So that was super disappointing, and we worked really hard. You might have, heard that our schools are constitutionally funded, and I will say this every meeting. What that means is that they are adequately funded according to the state constitution because of the Supreme Court's decision telling our legislature that you must adequately fund our K through 12. That funding is general education funding. And fun fact, 2022-23 school year is the first year that our schools have been constitutionally funded in decades. And if you take that out, we will not graduate a student in Kansas K through 12 until 2023. That has gone K through 12 in fully funded schools, but that is at risk because the funding formula is up in 2027, and they are making strides and doing everything they can to pull that down. Another thing, when you look at that as constitutionally funded for general ed, we have special ed. It's not addressed in our Constitution. It is addressed in our statutes. Our statute says that the legislature will appropriate 92% of the excess cost of educating special education students, which is required under federal education law. Every student is having their IDEA, their IEP plan, fully funded. What does that mean? Where does that money come from? $130+ million short. Where does that come from? It comes from the general education budget. So that graduate, if they make it through the formula, is still having funds pulled from their general education for special ed. The funding that is in, the budget bill is still going back and forth. And last year we added about $73 million to special education funding as a 4-year plan to bring us up to the 92%. The K-12 budget cut that to $30 million. They want to cut it to 10. And we are talking about only 73% of special education costs. I want to just make sure that people understand that because it is confusing to hear that our schools are fully funded. So I work on that 24/7, 365, and I will do it as long as you all will have me. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I apologize for sneaking in late here. I'm Representative Lidnsay Vaughn. I represent the 22nd House District, which is northern Overland Park, so 79th to 99th, and Metcalf to Schweitzer, with a little carve out for Representative Meyer's district. And I'm sure it's been said before, but I am just amazed by this crowd. This has been a really tough legislative session in terms of having a more entrenched supermajority, really bad policies that are passing, and just, I think, the worst process of any session that I've seen. And having you all here just gives me hope. I think it gives us hope for the future of changing both the supermajority in Kansas, but helping that translate to a federal level as well, which I know many people are fired up about that right now. So thank you for being here. In terms of the work that I do in the legislature, my primary committee, I'm ranking on the House Water Committee. And this is an area that I feel provides a lot of hope and bipartisanship. So it's an area that is really important to me in working with the other committee members to try and pass important policy to address our rapidly declining aquifer in western Kansas, sedimentation in our reservoirs, the water quality in our surface water streams, lakes, and ponds. So we've made major steps in improving those things in the last few years, and we have the potential to make more progress this year. So happy to talk more about that if folks are interested. And then I also serve on the Transportation Committee and the Judiciary Committee in the House, which has been really busy this year. So I know we want to open it up to audience questions, so I'll wrap up there. But thank you guys again for being here. And
I want to say something about you.
Oh. What Representative Vaughn will not tell you is that she's been featured in the New York Times for her work here in Kansas.
A couple things I want to mention. I'll give you a quick view of what's happening in the Senate. My friend Emily has a sign-up sheet circulating somewhere in the back. That's so we can send you action alerts about these important bills that are coming up. We will not stalk you or harass you. We'll just send you information again about some of these critical bills. If you're already on any of our distribution lists, you don't have to worry about signing up. But again, we just want to make sure you're getting the action alert so you can take the action to help stop some of these things. I want to go back real quick to what Mike was talking about in terms of the amendment regarding the Supreme Court. By all means, that has a lot to do with the abortion amendment from a couple of years ago. But the other component that is also very important here is school funding. Because there has been a very real faction in Topeka over the past 10 years working to defund our schools. And it hasn't quite gotten to where they want it to. We've had been able to push back enough to stop some of the worst bills. It'll be interesting this year, though, with this new supermajority, because, you know, we've had some protection on some of the worst bills from a veto of the governor, and then sometimes it's been difficult for this, you know, the large majority to get enough people to override those vetoes. It's a little different situation now. So we are working actively to be able to protect the veto of the governor on some of those very horrible voucher bills that are making it through the process. We're going to need your help on those too. So that's why it's so important to sign up for the action alerts, because I will tell you this, the legislature is more likely to act along the will of the people if they know you're watching and you're holding them accountable. So that's why it is so important to reach out. You know, incidentally too, we're working really, really hard, like I said, to protect the governor's vetoes on some of these really bad voucher bills. And I'll just give you a real quick commentary there. You know, voucher bills come in a lot of forms. Educational scholarships, backpack plans. There's a lot of different marketing terms that are used. School choice is what it's being branded right now. We already have school choice. So make no doubt about it. This is about shifting your taxpayer dollars from public schools to private entities. We don't do that with anything else. You know, you pay taxes for your library, but if you don't like your library, we won't give you a gift card to go somewhere else or build your own.
Right.
You know, we don't do that with roads and highways. You don't like the one around you, government won't give you a credit to go build your own, whatever. So it is highly irregular that this area is being viewed and done differently. And again, you know, public funds belong in public schools. That's your money. Those are ours, our public schools. What's also important to keep in mind is, again, we have the supermajority right now. We have a governor's race in less than 2 years. So should we get a person elected who believes in vouchers, and most of the candidates who are running for the Republican nomination at this point have been supportive of vouchers in the past. So should that happen, then we're not talking about a 2/3 majority to override a veto. We're talking about a simple majority to put those plans in place. And that's a huge concern. So that's why we need you all ready, active, and staying engaged, because, you know, I say it every year. We have the most important election coming up. Oh my gosh. We have the most important elections coming up here over the next couple of years to ensure that we can keep our public schools. That's our main job, to fund the public schools. So like I said, it's a very real threat that's there. I'll give you a quick update about what's happening in the Senate. I'm on the Public Health Committee, and I'm the ranking minority leader there. Feels like it's 2020 in that committee. We are still hearing bills about COVID. And these are bills that we've heard 3 and 4 times that didn't make it through the process, so they're trying it again. We've had a few other bills that in regard to compacts to allow people to practice in other states. So we've had that come through. Those have been a good thing. But otherwise, like I said, a lot of bills still dealing with COVID. Utilities, that's my normal committee, I guess. Is that what we're calling it? Or we have some
Functioning committee? Functioning?
Okay, yeah. That's my palate cleanse committee after some other, you know, interesting bills that worked at other committees. So like I said, that was pretty normal. I'm on Ways and Means this year. That is where the budget is put together. It is a very strange process. I used to put budgets together for Sprint, one of the functions there. I put together budgets for our operations for everything west of the Mississippi. This is the strangest process I have ever seen. I don't even know if process is the right word. We in the Senate, the game plan was to wait for the House to pass something, and then it would come over to us. And then now we are reviewing the different elements. And very strangely, when changes are made, sometimes people are bringing forward an amendment that is, professionally typed up as it's supposed to be. Other times, they're just verbalizing. That is dangerous to me. That, is information getting captured accurately? Because, budgets are a very intricate process. And in fact, we had this happen a couple weeks ago. There was an amendment made verbally, and there have been so many questions on what exactly does it affect. And without clear, detailed clarification, it just allows even more room for error. I'm also a part of the Government Efficiency Committee. That was modeled after the federal level DOGE committee. Similarly, it's a lot of going after the little guys, and it's been very disappointing and very disheartening. We've heard bills in there that deal with TANF funding, and there have been accusations of waste and fraud. And we have so many layers of review. The form itself to apply for those funds is over 30 pages long, which is a deterrent in itself. But we have lots of checks in places. So what we've heard about is a lot of speculation of fraud. And we're kind of waiting to get the receipts on some of those because, again, it just feels a lot like what's happening on the federal level. That, going after, the little guys in terms of some of the programs that are out there as safety nets. Other than that, again, we have 3 weeks left, a very compact session. So some of that is concerning because it doesn't allow a lot of other bills to go through. But then I guess on the flip side, maybe less time to have this legislature in session is better. But like I said, still a lot of concerning things happening there. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions then. If there are any particular committees, bills, et cetera, that you'd like to ask about,
Cindy,
that's what we do here.
Can you repeat the question for the?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the rolling average and how that would be implemented along with the constitutional amendment that you guys are working on. So I was wondering, how would that be implemented?
All right, so the way that this rolling average would be is that, so for instance, to get something on the Constitution first, or, on your ballot, first of all, you have to have 2/3 of the House vote on the bill itself, which says when this question will be put to the ballot, so, and what the actual language is. So the way that this rolling average would work is that technically it would be the lowest, I think, in the past, 3 or 4 years, right? But so we passed it with a 2/3 majority in the House, but the problem is that in the Senate tax chair hates the rolling average, super hates it, and I don't know if there will be the 2/3 majority necessary on the Senate side. But if that does pass, then it goes on your ballot this November, so during the city elections, and then it's a statewide vote, and it would have to win by a simple majority. So it could win by 1 vote and become law. But in order to change that part, the way that our, our assessments are made is, our appraisals are made, because that's appraised value, not to be confused with assessed value. I don't want to make you all bored, right? But in any case, that is it requires constitutional change, not a simple bill. We do have another tax change that we passed through the House as well, but it's a little bit different, so I don't want to digress too much.
Okay, she's motioning towards me in terms
It's
of
not, no,
Senate.
she's cool. She's cool. Yeah.
I am not the Senate tax chair that hates stuff, okay?
No,
Just-
no, Cindy knows what she's doing. I'm going to keep standing so I can see everyone. I hope that doesn't make it weird.
Tina, go ahead.
House Bill 2062, is it going to be approved by the Senate in the next 3 weeks?
Can you remind me which one that is? I'll look it up real quick.
No. Oh, wait, yes. Oh, yeah, from judiciary.
Yeah,
That's you.
that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good work, team.
Sure. Thank Thank you. Yeah, 2062. So this was a bill that came through judiciary. I'm the ranking member on it. There were 3 proponents to the bill, and they were all effectively like Kansans for Life or the Christian Church. They were all very, very invested in making sure that child support payments got on. And I was like, why would you be that concerned about child support payments? And the reason why is because the definition within the bill has nothing to do with child support. It has to do with a definition of establishing unborn children as equal to born children as it relates to child support payments, making it one step towards rolling off the question of protections for abortion. And that's the reason why that this bill even went through. I actually put together an amendment that effectively said, you want child support payments for unborn children. You want to make sure that pregnant women have the resources available. Let us do that. We're going to have an amendment that is just making certain that child support payments only happen, or that the child support payments are applicable for pregnancy-related causes. That is it. It has nothing to do with anything else, and that was shot down strictly on party lines. So obviously the question of wanting child support payments was not what they were there for. This passed through the House. It's expected to go to the Senate, and it is expected that it will be heard in the Senate, and unfortunately probably passed through the Senate as well.
It already went out of committee.
It already got passed out of Senate committee.
It already got passed out of Senate committee then. So fantastic. So it is going to it's going to go to the Senate floor, and it will go. Do you have an above the line? I don't even know how it necessarily works there, but so in the House you have what's called above the line and below the line, which means that anything that passes out of our committee stays below the line until the Speaker of the House decides what goes above the line. And I would imagine the same thing happens here, where the President of the Senate makes the determination of any bill that happens that goes out of committee, then it goes above the line for debate on the Senate floor. So that is the next step, and I would suggest that if this is not something that you want, you might want to get in contact with your senators and let them know that this bill is coming up and you do not support it.
Just for the record, I will not be supporting it, so if I'm your senator, there you go.
I just wanted to add something. I also serve on Judiciary Committee, and for those wondering, it's already in law that judges have to consider expenses related or incident to the child's birth in their child support payment judgments. So this is already the law. What this is doing is further codifying fetal personhood into our civil code. This is the first time outside of involuntary manslaughter that or I think that's criminal code too.
Yeah.
But
yep.
Out of it is the first use of fetal personhood in our civil code. So it's further codifying that, and then in the bill it also uses the term elective abortion to define what they view, in my mind, as an acceptable abortion, which only includes, they use the antithesis of that in the bill. So it essentially implies that the only form of acceptable abortion is to save the life of the mother. It's not acceptable if it was rape, it's not acceptable if it was incest, or all these other things. So it's, again, chipping away at abortion rights and access in our statutes, and it's not needed because it's already the law that we support mothers through child support payments. The other part that is concerning is that it does put us at risk for federal funds, because in federal law they define child support as starting when the child is born, from the time moving forward, and then they supplement that with federal dollars. So if we start saying that it's before the child is born, that we're at risk of losing, I don't know the total amount, but quite a bit of federal dollars as well. So this is already the law. In terms of supporting the mother, this just further codifies fetal personhood, chipping away at abortion rights, and it isn't needed.
If it passes the Senate, wait a minute, is this amendment? No, this is regular bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a regular bill.
Regular bill, okay. If it passes the Senate, it will go to the governor for her signature. If she vetoes it, then potentially it will come back in the veto session, which at this point is scheduled to be in April.
We don't have the votes to stop it.
All right, right here.
Quick question, is the Ruby Bridges Walks to School Day, did it just stay in committee? Or I tried to check online yesterday, and it said it was still in committee.
Thank you for the question. So there was a bill in House Education that would make Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day a commemorative day in the state of Kansas. And it was brought forth by the Kansas Black Leadership Council, and it was heard on Kansas Black Legislative Day that is sponsored by Kansas Black Leadership Council. The bill was introduced by Representative Barbara Ballard, the longest-serving African-American, or longest-serving member of the legislature, period, and the first African-American woman. And the hearing was shameful and abysmal. We had children who actually met Ruby Bridges herself that came and testified. The chair suppressed their video testimony. That was the invitation, saying she couldn't have minors go, be public, yet the video is already public on the exact same YouTube as the committee hearing would be. And 11 Republicans voted no on passing it out of committee. And then the very next day, all 11 of those voted for a commemorative day on the floor the next day. And the comments in committee were, when will it end? What's next? One member even said, we already have Black History Month and Martin Luther King Jr. Day. What's next? Brown versus Board Day? I was like, yes, let's do that too. So it is still in committee. The good news is that it's still in committee, and there is a mirror bill that KDLC brought on the Senate side in Fed State, though. So maybe we can bring it back next year or something, but any support on that is also appreciated.
I do have the video. There's a kind of a montage of some of the different comments that were made in that hearing. It is posted on my Facebook page, and it is hard to watch for the reasoning as to why some of our legislative members did not want to move forward on that. So, and so much work done by Mari-Lynn. So, thank you.
And the children that came, when they were asked by the news, it was so fabulous because what they said is, we know Ruby would want us to keep trying. Right? And I do have her manager's cell phone, and I texted him that, and he goes, yes, she does.
So, thank you all. All right, back here. Yes, ma'am.
If there were one or two issues that you think a groundswell of support could influence, what would those be?
I think public schools. I think stopping the vouchers because there are how many counties that don't even have a private school? 63. Okay. So this is where we can get our rural colleagues on board with our Johnson County values. Really, they're just going to send their money to Johnson County. And I have 2 private schools in my district. I mean, I guess that's great if you want to send me your money from Western Kansas. That's not going to help your school. So I think that might be, I don't like to say anything out loud ever. So that might be the one thing I would say we could get on board. There's also a bill that I super duper hate that didn't make it through the House with a veto-proof majority, but don't use your time on that just yet.
Are we talking about the same bill? Maybe
Well,
not.
I'm talking about home-based business bill.
Yeah.
I can't even get to that bill. I know where you are in there.
I think that Linda is right, Representative Featherston is right. We have to rally around our public schools and support our teachers, support our public school funding, and our SPED funding. This battle has been going on for so long, and you all keep trying, and we keep fighting too, and we just need to keep the pressure on. If we give up, if we back down even an inch, they'll take that inch and they'll run. I also think that it's really important that we do pay attention to judicial selection and anything that comes out of elections, frankly. On that 3-day grace period bill, for instance, we offered some very reasonable amendments We tried really hard at the well to get them through. One of them I introduced was increasing the time period to mail out the ballots to 45 days prior to the election, and that was, shot down. There were other ones that were deemed non-germane, which were absolutely germane. And, if we want to protect our democracy, we have to fight for free and fair elections. And we cannot let people who are trying to convince others that our elections are not free and fair to win, because they have an ulterior motive. I guarantee you that I don't. My motive is to make sure that everyone has the right to vote, and that we can have safe and secure elections. And I think our current Secretary of State is doing an excellent job of protecting that right. And we need to stop undermining the common sense things that we have going on. So I think that those are the top two. I also want to mention one of the issues that I passionately support and talk about is LGBTQ rights. This is an issue about human rights and about protecting our children and our families. And, it's not something that I wanted to be a mouthpiece for, but I became that because they kept bringing these horrible, atrocious bills. And I cannot tell you how important it is to hear from all of you on these issues and the support of them. But also, our families across the state are hurting so much right now, and hearing the strong voices of support for their children and their communities is just so important. So while that's kind of a third, and it's not really something that I wish we as a state even had to take up, I think that it's important that you keep making your voices heard and support, because those kids really do hear you and they need that support and love right now. So thank you.
Well, thanks. And I just want to piggyback off of Representative Meyer's comments about the 3-day grace period for mail-in ballots. That passed the House with 80 votes. 4 Republicans were missing that day, and it is now passed to the Senate and headed to the governor's desk. If the governor chooses to override the bill, to veto the bill, and the House chooses to take up an override, we have a member in Johnson County, Laura Williams, who voted to get rid of that in the last session. However, there is new and different information this time as we are considering this bill, and that is the fact that Representative Pat Proctor is on videotape with a Zoom meeting saying that his goal is to eliminate advance voting completely in the state of Kansas. He is on tape. I recommend that you go find it and see that that is what he has actually said, and that this bill is to chip away to get to that point. He wants mail ballots to be available only for military and severely disabled. Where does that put our out-of-state college students? Like I said, my husband and I have 7 kids. We've had out-of-state college students. Where does that put people? And to get rid of advance voting directly. So I think that we, as a group, can, whether you are in her district or not, email her and say, the future of democracy in the state of Kansas rides on you if the governor overrides or vetoes this bill. And stay tuned for that. But that person is Representative Laura Williams in Lenexa, and she says that she's a moderate Republican. And so I do think that the Johnson County, whether you're in her district or not, you can say that she has responsibility for the future of voting in the state of Kansas should the governor veto that bill.
And it's Bill what?
Senate Bill 4.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 4. Yeah, when my first term, I knew every number of every bill.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're in 5, it's like, bill number, I don't know, tell me what it is. So.
That's hard to keep track.
Senator Cindy, I want to recognize you as an appreciative and commend you for your attempt to get Medicaid expansion.
We keep trying every year on Medicaid expansion. I mean, sadly, the numbers just aren't there in the legislature to move it forward. But yeah, we're gonna keep bringing it forward because it's the right thing to do. It's supported by close to 80% of the people. The amount of money we have lost is astounding.
To the representative on the Rules Committee, I appreciate your dedication too with single parent, and I know how tough it is, but with the 93% increase in pay that you got this year, I trust the legislators, all of you, are appreciating our contribution to that.
Yes, I voted no on that bill. And also I strongly support a cost of living increase for our retired public employees. In particular, our teachers, I have a number of teachers in my legislative district who worked hard educating my children, probably educating me, which was no mean feat, I might add. And I want to make sure that, you know, that those employees are getting taken care of the most. And so we continue to push for and fight for that. We also continue to push for reform to CAPERS, which is the public retirement system. So, you know, as someone who has served in the public in some form or another, I'm one of the very fortunate few that has a CAPERS 1, but a lot of people up here have CAPERS 3. A lot of our new teachers and new public employees do. You might also be aware of a new bill that is being pushed. I think it's in the Senate. It's called the Kansas Back to Work thing. Again, this is people trying to be like the federal government, but I want you all to keep in mind this. A lot of our public employees, particularly those who work in the Department of Revenue, where it's not very easy to find people, are remote workers. And one of the things that really helps with rural Kansas revitalization is allowing people to work remotely so that they can continue to live in and spend money in their rural areas. We often put in things into place that, you know, that support sort of a dying rural Kansas, you know, our frontier communities or our rural communities. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to continue supporting remote work. So hopefully that bill will not go anywhere. Thank you.
One last question for you. On the property tax issue that is moving through, as I understand it, one city, our Democratic mayor testified against that bill.
No change. I will tell you this. All right, so again, because I am on the tax committee, we got one written only opposition testimony letter that was from the city attorney, and after review,
City of Overland Park.
Yes, City of Overland Park, and after review, they changed their testimony to neutral. And so some of that is, you have a lot of city governments that will say, and, you know, hopefully I don't have, you know, locally elected folks coming after me, but you will hear them say, oh, we have the lowest mill levy in the state. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm glad you don't have to raise your mill levy, but as our valuations go up, they're still getting more money in there. So,
That's what I couldn't understand.
yeah, and so I get it. I don't want to come after them. I think that they are duly elected folks, but also we do need to do something. That is the number one thing that I have heard about. And plus, this is one of the very few things, tax issues, that we can get full-throated bipartisan support for, and unity, especially when we're in the super minority, and especially when I have been hearing repeatedly from all of you about how we're getting hit as far as the economic situation is concerned. This is one thing where I will, again, will work with our locally elected folks, but I also, my loyalty is first to my constituents. So we'll continue working. Representative Featherston?
Thank you. Since I circled on local gov, I saw that one testimony, and I have changed the vote on one testimony because I only represent one city. Overland Park has in their legislative position that they oppose all tax lids. So that bill has a lid on it saying you can't raise or
The constitutional amendment doesn't, but the
right.
other one does.
And so
It's a soft lid.
that is why their initial testimony was in opposition. But we all received word, like we all started contacting Overland Park, first of all, to say, why? What's the problem? This would be good for our constituents. And we all received word on the floor before the vote was taken that Overland Park had changed their position. So the thing is, you'll get a trigger word, tax lid, that they're like, nope. But when given the chance to think about it more, then they realize you've got to have some flexibility. If they want to charge over the tax lid, then they're not going to be eligible for the ASTRA fund, formerly LAVTR. And that's their issue, that's not our issue.
I will mention, and I thank you for that question you asked earlier about what are the two issues we can really have the most impact on. Yeah, absolutely schools, but taxes. Because, you know, there's a lot of nuances to some of these plans that are being put out there. And what we have to be very careful of is, you know, if you were here last month at the town hall, we had Chris Portright here talking about property taxes and different tax proposals. And, you know, the term he used was squeezing the balloon. And we have to be very careful that a lot of these plans do just that. When we say squeeze the balloon, that maybe sometimes we as a legislature kind of dictate to the local level, well, you can't do this. And it allows us to give credit or get credit for passing a bill that addresses property taxes. When really, in effect, what it does is it makes the local level take different action to collect the taxes they need. So, like I said, that is the thing that we have to be very cautious of, that when we are working some of these tax bills, that we're not just squeezing the balloon, that we're actually delivering relief in the form that it needs to come in. We have time for one more question. I know you had your hand up earlier, so go ahead.
I just want to know, how is what's going on the national level with so many people losing jobs, USAID not buying food from the Kansas farmers, Medicare money might be taken from it, a lot of workers losing their jobs all over the state and the country. How is that impact our taxes, our economy, what's going to be happening in the Kansas legislature because of these changes coming, and who knows how many more are going to be coming in the very near future, because we know our national representatives don't want to speak to us because we're not real Kansans in Johnson. I just want to know what's going to, because we might not have the money that we have now. You might not be able to cut taxes once there's no more people working in Kansas.
Well, and that's a good point too. She's asking about the changes on the national level, cuts in jobs, cuts in programs. You know, and first, let's go back to the fact that on tax relief and, you know, different tax programs, we've got to look in the out years. You know, we've had a lot of different tax relief programs passed the last couple of years. So I think the projections are that within about 3 years, you know, that revenue base starts going the other way and we're in the red. So we have to be careful in how we're managing these things. But I'll give you an example. Like, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the Department of Education being dismantled. The main focus there is helping out when it comes to special ed and disabilities and ensuring that our children are getting educated. So it may take a while because they have a few more guardrails in place on the federal level than we do on the state level. But however, with this disbanding, I mean, nothing has been said about the money. You know, nothing has been said. Well, it's been said that it's going to be up to the states. But it certainly hasn't been said, well, we're going to send the states the money. So no, the implication there is that, yes, it comes to the states, but we have to come up with the money to do the funding. And that goes back to the problem we talked about earlier. We're just barely inadequate on general ed. Special ed, we're still under. And because special ed is federally mandated, and we need to do it, we need to educate everybody. But because it's federally mandated, we have to take money from the general ed bucket and put it over here. That hurts everybody. That hurts us in terms of being able to hire more teachers, have the supplies we need. So I get a little bit, I don't know, get a little flustered with some of my peers when they say, we've been increasing education over and over every year. How much money are we expected to put there? But what they don't tell you is that 10 years ago, we were so severely underfunded that of course it looks like we put a large amount there. I mean, my oldest is one of the kids who is part of that generation that never attended a school that was fully funded. I mean, we have a whole generation of kids that were in underfunded schools. We lost all kinds of teachers during the Brownback time frame and the block grants. You know, we didn't have supplies. I mean, God bless our teachers. They worked through it and they got us here. But you will hear that frequently in this debate about our schools. Well, we're spending more than we ever have. Well, yeah, we were so severely underfunded that we were just eking by. So, like I said, that is something to watch out for. Okay, I think we can do one more question. There was somebody way in the back. Okay, yes, sir, right back here.
Hate it.
You know, he's
No.
gonna.
You want to talk?
Yeah,
was anyone on election?
That's
Yeah, Heather.
Hold
What
on.
do you think?
Let me
Yeah.
pull it up.
That's that stupid one that we.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's pretty
Monday,
bad.
right? Yeah.
So this is in regard to raising the limits on campaign contributions. And these are the individual contributions that come in to all of us as candidates. What did I hear? That's the stupid one?
I don't. It's bad.
Now the Senate may view it differently. You never know. But
But also unlimited for campaign parties.
and campaign parties.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I have a bill that would address, some of the worst things that happen are in terms of dark money. The money that goes through PACs, because it's not transparent. The limits just aren't the same there as they are on individual campaign contributions. That's where your billionaire networks go to essentially buy elections, through the PACs, through that dark money. I have a bill on that. Has not been granted a hearing. But we've got this one.
Oh, okay. So I told you elections was a messy, controversial committee this year. So we debated this a lot in committee. We tried to get amendments on that would, we were basically trying to poke the bear, right, and show their hypocrisy. That's kind of the power that we have right now, unfortunately. And I'll just be real. We don't have the numbers necessarily, especially not in committee, to get some of our amendments passed unless, for instance, we can convince someone otherwise, which is very unlikely in a stacked committee like elections. Our ranking committee member, Representative Kirk Haskins of Topeka, he has been doing such hard work and such good work, leading the committee and pushing back. This is my first year on the committee. The first year I served on it was back in 2022, and I haven't been back on since then. As I said earlier, Representative Proctor is the chair. This one, we tried to raise the limits in an equitable way. We tried to reduce them. All of the amendments failed. And I think it's interesting too and I wanted to bring this up earlier, when we think about the judicial constitutional amendment and how this could potentially impact it. Essentially, the way that it's going to work now is that it would be like unlimited funding could go into a party. And, they said on the surface they were trying to make it so that PACs would have less influence. But that's not the case at all. And we know that's not exactly how it would work. I would definitely encourage you to watch the debate that we had on the floor and in committee on this. A lot of great points were raised. It's a long one. Definitely get some popcorn and maybe a glass of wine. But a couple glasses. Yeah, you're right, Stephanie. But I think it's really important to think about how this would potentially, impact the judicial election process too, because then we really run into problems like we're having in Wisconsin, right? And so, I don't know how this is gonna end up turning out, but I'm really disappointed in the way that the legislature voted on it.
Okay, we're not going to end on a downer.
Yeah.
A couple of things I want to mention. We are pretty much out of time, but I think most of us will stick around if you have questions until they kick us out of here, make us go home. I do want to mention to you, my friend Jan Kessinger up here, former representative. A current Blue Valley School Board member, he was texting with another one of our friends in the House, saying that we are looking for 2 to 4 votes to stop the Supreme Court resolution. We're working to get names, so I'll post that information as soon as we have it, because it is so important to have you all reach out to these parties. Sometimes it's not just only letting them know how you feel, it's also letting them know the support is there to vote in a particular way. So that's very, very important. As we finish up, again, these sheets are up here. We've got more of them now in regard to the constitutional amendment. We'll continue to post information in terms of these bills and action items. Again, the next 3 weeks, super, super critical in terms of everything happening. I often joke when you come to these town halls, sometimes you might feel like you need alcohol or chocolate. I know, I'm sorry, we did not bring that. But let me say this, we need you all.
Yeah.
We need your backing on some of these very horrible bills and the votes we're taking, and we need your help to reach out to some of our peers to help them make the right decision. So I thank you again for being here. We'll be here next month. See you then.